Order! Order! You are an incorrigible delinquent at times. Behave yourself, man!
Now, the leadership of the Green Party, and I've got 50% of it here in the studio, has got a plan to try to reverse a situation which saw it win just one common seat for more than 1 million votes at the last election. It's been urging other parties on the left of politics to join a so-called progressive alliance, including electoral pacts in some areas, to help defeat Conservative candidates. Let's have a listen to Caroline's other half, politically speaking, Jonathan Bartley.
A progressive alliance can mean different things in different constituencies. But it will not be top-down, and it will be up to you. And our message to others who share a belief in a progressive modern Britain is this. Old tribal loyalties are dying. Voters can no longer be taken for granted. The era of two-party politics is over.
Jonathan Bartley, more of him later. And we're joined now by the Labour MP Peter Kyle, a neighbouring MP to Caroline Lucas in Brighton and Hove. Welcome to the programme. Caroline Lucas, how exactly would an electoral pact work?
I think it would be up to local people in local constituencies to make that decision. But what we're talking about essentially is a one-off arrangement in a number of marginal seats whereby at the minute you might have Peter and myself fighting it out and a Tory comes through the middle, and in Brighton and Hove this thing happens again and again. So what we want to try to do is to get enough MPs who would have electoral reform as the number one issue in their manifesto, so that under the next election you could then change this archaic system whereby this government was elected on just 24% of the eligible vote, where the Green Party gets 1.1 million votes, just one MP. In Scotland, Labour gets nearly 25% of the vote, again, just one Scottish Labour MP.
All right,
That's
so
not fair.
For marginal seats, what's not to like?
Well, I think every time I hear and speak to Caroline about this, I can really see the logic and the understanding of why this is an issue which a lot of people care about. But then when I go away and think about it through the eyes of the electorate, I can't see how it would work through their eyes, because I think what we're doing is, as a group of establishment Labour Party and Green Party and other party officials, stitching up the election. And I think from their side, through their eyes, they just wouldn't understand why we're doing it.
But you like it otherwise?
No, what I like is the idea that parties come together and work when it's in our public and it's in the common interest between our two parties. Demonstrate, like Caroline and I did during the European referendum. What I don't like is an electoral stitch-up.
I do agree that a stitch-up, something that looks like it's top-down, imposed, wouldn't work and wouldn't be right. But in Brighton and Hove, you know, Peter, there's a so-called Compass group, and there's another group called Sussex Progressives. These are not party members of either of our parties necessarily. They are local people coming together and saying, hang on, politicians, could you please work it out in such a way that you don't have politicians who share more in common than they have apart, fighting it out between them, having Conservatives coming through again and again. Could you not be a bit wiser given this electoral system?
Would you be prepared to do that? Would you stand down from your seat in order to allow the Labour candidate to win?
If it was part of an overall deal, I would do what was best in the Green Party's interest. So, yes, obviously it has to be the case that ultimately one would have to be prepared to consider that.
Right.
But the bottom line has to be that there's a fair outcome, so that the Greens would get more seats than just the one that they have at the minute.
There's two issues I have with this, I think. The first is that the voters and even our own supporters don't, and they shouldn't, do what we tell them to do. So I think that if you think there's 3,000 Green votes in Hove, now of course I've got a majority of 1,236, so that would be great for me to have those. But I think when you look at my voting record, there are some really sort of red lines that your voters wouldn't cross. For example, my vote on Trident. And I understand the principle why people would oppose that, but I don't think if you didn't field a candidate that they would automatically vote for me. I think a lot of them would just feel disenfranchised, and that's what really worries me about this idea.
Except there are disagreements within Labour on the issue of Trident, of course, so as we well know. So, I mean, there are disagreements within parties. If it meant that Labour would win more seats, surely from a mercenary point of view, that would be better for Labour.
Well, let me put it this way then. I think Brighton is a great example of this. In the last election, there was local elections on the same day as parliamentary, the general election. Greens were running the council, and the number one reason that for voting intention, according to a BBC poll and our own doorstepping, was who's going to get rid of the Green Party locally. So we fought a very assiduous campaign, because we were in third place on the council for the local council elections, that we would be more competent than the Greens locally. And then if we had said, don't vote for the Greens, vote for us locally, but in the same day, we were in a pact for the parliamentary elections.
You're trying to find all kinds of obstacles when the
He doesn't want to do it. He doesn't want to do it.
No,
Well,
it's not a very rigorous line.
I think voters would see it as an establishment stitch-up, and they wouldn't do what we tell them.
I've already said that this is actually a demand coming up from the grassroots, particularly in a place like Brighton and Hove. And I've also said that the big thing, the red line would be, do we want to try to get a system where we have fairer votes?
All right.
That's not a stitch-up for us.
Let's have it
it's
just
further
briefly.
away
Would
from
you
that.
say yes to proportional representation? Would you be...
No.
Right, well then therein lies the deal in tatters. But let's go a little bit further in terms of
Peter doesn't
support.
speak for the whole of the Labour
Well,
Party.
that's what I was just about to come
I do
to.
speak for a party which has 230 MPs, you know, not a party that has more leaders than MPs, and that's the difficulty with having an alliance between the two of us.
Oh, that was a bit of a thing there.
Well, it was, and I don't think he's done himself any favours with that, because he's usually very courteous. But what I would say to him is, surely
it's the
Labour
realities of what we're trying to do
recognises...
here.
No, well, the reality of what we're trying to do here, surely, is to give people a voice. And if you've got an electoral system that means that in so many seats, they are safe seats, it's not worth people voting because they know they can't get rid of them.
We do need to reform. I don't think
PR
PR answers all of the questions we need, particularly with the strength of the political culture we have with the establishment between a constituency and an MP.
And there's no reason to lose that. You know as well as I do.
In other areas it has, and that worries me.
I need to ask Caroline something else. You were the one who said he doesn't speak, Peter Carr, for the whole of the Labour Party.
And
Jeremy Corbyn does. What conversations have you had with Jeremy Corbyn's office about this?
Before the summer, Natalie Bennett and myself wrote to Jeremy Corbyn, to Leanne Wood, to Tim Farron. And we've had various responses back, more or less warm, but saying obviously that there needs to be more debate within those different parties. From Jeremy's office, we've got a message coming back saying, that they're interested. And then what happened in the middle, of course, was then a big leadership election, and we've not heard back. But we do know that there are plenty of people within Labour who are interested in this idea because they recognise that our electoral system right now is consigning us, progressive politicians, to silence.
And this includes Jeremy Corbyn. You think he is warm to the idea?
He has not told me he is warm to the idea, but the people around him suggest that he is.
And would they like to meet once the leadership contest is over, depending, of course, on the result? They would like to meet.
They have told me they would like to meet. But what I'm saying is that surely Labour is not... You must see that you are not going to win the next general election, whoever your next leader is. Look at Scotland, look at the constituency boundary changes. You owe it to people. You owe it to people who vote Labour to try to get it.
We're a party that
and
does
look at
win,
the polls,
and history tells us we can.
Polls.
That's the difference between the two of us.
Well, the agreement's not going well so far, but anyway, there's time. Peter Carr, thank you. Now, job sharing is becoming more common in some British industries. For instance, Andrew and I share presenting duties. Indeed, we do, although I always insist that he does the weekends, and I'll be right. But will it work at the top of a political party? Here's Mark LaBelle.
It's been a long climb out of the political wilderness for the Green Party, and old habits die hard.
Ah, the good old days when tree sit-ins and beards were in vogue as the Green Party's popularity rose in the late 80s. Over 2 million people voted Green in the 1989 European elections after this Crayola-inspired campaign broadcast.
Is this the picture you want for your children?
Fueling calls for the party to have a leader.
There is an alternative.
Past moves to streamline the party have led invariably to the call for a leader. Each year the motion reappears, rejected roundly by the members, who see no need for a single pop-up face to fill the TV screens and dominate the party.
Almost 20 years later, Caroline Lucas was elected as their first traditional party leader, and her breakthrough moment came when she entered the Commons shortly after that.
Thank you so much for putting the politics of hope above the politics of fear. We shall not be moved.
3 years later, she joined anti-fracking protesters and was arrested for blocking a highway. She was later found not guilty. Coming through. Her successor as leader, Natalie Bennett, is credited with overseeing a rise in party membership, if not quite remembering what her policies were.
How can you hope to raise 45 billion?
People are very welcome to have a look at the Green Party website and see how the figures are worked out.
You would make it legal for people living here to be a member of Al-Qaeda or ISIS or the IRA. You'd make it legal to be a member of a terrorist organisation,
And
correct?
exactly. What we want to do is
Ouch!
make sure we're
She
not
complained of brain fade in interviews. So, are two brains better than one?
We stand here more united with two leaders than other parties are with one.
Co-leader Jonathan Bartley was once a researcher for the Conservative Party before coming to prominence publicly challenging David Cameron about his policies on inclusive education with his disabled son by his side.
You're not representing the needs of children.
Most recently, he was the Green Party's spokesman on work and pensions.
Be very careful. No, be very careful. You say that you're...
So what pitfalls could Britain's first political party pontiff part-timers face? I asked The Guardian's part-time political editor.
You have to be completely tight. No one can get a slip of paper between you. If somebody comes talking to me, trying to lobby me, well, Heather knows exactly what they've been saying because I tell her, and vice versa. You're not just leader of the Green Party Monday to Friday, 9 to 5. You're leader of the Green Party all the time. You know, the world of news doesn't stop, the world of politics doesn't stop. So, in theory, one person can't be there 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. So actually, I think it's going to become much more sensible to have job shares across these senior positions.
Green Party members overwhelmingly back this job share at the top of their party. Now the two leaders could well determine whether this first in Westminster politics lasts.
And we're joined now by the other half of the new Green Party leadership featured there in that film, Jonathan Bartley. Congratulations to both of you.
Thank you very
welcome
much.
to the programme. So why a job share?
Well, I approached Caroline about it because of my personal circumstances. I have a passion for politics, a long-standing interest in it, but my son is disabled. I have responsibilities for him, to look after him, care for him, but I also think that brings something important to politics. We need people with experience like those so that they can be authentic in their politics, but a lot of people are, cut out of the system. They don't have the time to be able to do it because they have those responsibilities, they have caring responsibilities, or they are disabled themselves. And it's a way of demonstrating a new way of politics. We'd like to see this idea spread.
How will it work on a day-to-day basis? How will you divide all the responsibilities?
Well, it's working very well already. We've had a long hustings kind of campaign. We've done 12 or so hustings around the country. We've done a lot of interviews like this and talked to people. We divide up responsibilities, play to our strengths. Caroline will be in her constituency quite a lot.
Right.
The serious thing is here, what we want to make about a political point is that if you look at Westminster in particular, if anyone casting their eyes across those green benches could hardly say that the people there represent modern Britain. And so if we want to have a parliament that is more representative of people in the country, then I think job sharing is a practical way to do that, having more black people, having more people with disabilities, having more people with caring responsibilities. I think that we need to have a greater diversity, and many people cannot just give 24/7 necessarily, and therefore anything we can do to make Parliament a bit more representative and ensure that MPs have got one foot firmly placed back in their constituency, I think will lead to better politics.
But let's say it's Tuesday today. We're doing the story on Black Lives Matter. We did it with Caroline because she was first up on the show. But who would I call on a Tuesday to say who wants to do it?
Presumably you called the press office.
Right, and they would decide, but do they then have to call you and say, right, who's up?
I mean, I can't believe, Jo, that you're really making these questions.
because
you
these
know
are the
that
practical,
job sharing,
these are the practical
and
issues.
you know that job sharing is such a common thing across the country, and thank goodness politics
But
is
not
catching
in
up.
politics.
Yes, but it's the same issue, isn't it, about
So how
who's
would
going
it
to do a
work?
particular operation, who's
Right.
going to run a particular story, who's going to lead on a particular story on your programme. You know as well as I do that it is not rocket science to work that out.
What is great about this is when, if one of us is doing something, we would have had to normally turn the interview down because we would be elsewhere. Usually another one's available. So
Right.
the media are getting, two for the price of one. They're getting, more availability.
I see,
they're
it's like
getting
a
more chance to
supermarket
comment.
deal. But you say why am I asking about the practical details? Because they are important, aren't they? If you are working on a big story on fracking, or if you are working on a big campaign and you can't make it, and that's your strength, does it then get handed over to Jonathan? Do you have to tell each other, I'm not going to be able to do these days this week, can you cover for me?
The reason that I was kind of saying, Jo, why are you asking these questions, is because, of course, those are the kinds of conversations that happen, just as they would happen in any other organisation where job sharing is now common.
But
and
a leader of a party is a one person, has been up until now, role where you're asking for an opinion and you're asking for
Maybe in Westminster that's been the case, but around the world it clearly isn't. CEOs of the 20 CEOs of Fortune 500 companies have been job sharing.
Politics.
Yeah, in Germany, in Sweden. I mean, Green parties right around the world have done this.
And
So
maybe
it's
it's
not
because we have a
unusual.
slightly different vision of leadership as well.
So
because
what's the difference then between the two of you in terms of vision?
No, I would simply say that in the Green Party, leadership is far more of a collegiate, cooperative, discursive thing. It's not a top-down, we've just had a view in the night that we're going to do X, and we just impose it, and therefore you need to know exactly what's gone in the brain of that particular person. It's much more deliberative, it's much more discussed with our Green Party executive, and therefore maybe that's a different kind of leadership, which is actually rather more attractive as well.
What if you have a disagreement on a key policy area?
Well, the great thing about the Green Party is that all our policies are decided democratically by our members, and so we go out and we are spokespeople, effectively. I mean, what do you do when you have a disagreement with Andrew?
We fight it out to the end. And I always win. That's just how it happens. I mean, you did have a system of having two principal speakers at one time, and it was abandoned. And you were one of the people, Caroline, who wanted it abandoned. So, in a way, you've sort of tried this, and you didn't like it.
I mean, the problem with principal speakers, I mean, thank goodness we did get it down to 2 in the end. There were times when we had 8, 10 and more than that. But we used to spend most of interviews like this trying to explain what a principal speaker was. So by using the language of leaders, co-leaders, at least we think that probably means something more to you, to the public and so forth, and then we can get on and talk about our policies rather than about our structures.
All right. Thank you very much. We can agree on that, all of us. And Caroline, we'll say goodbye to you. But Jonathan, you're staying.